Hey, I'm Matt Manny. Thanks so much for joining me for today's devotional thought. Today we're going to talk about this idea that God hasn't stopped speaking. Way, a long time ago, years before we started the church, for Amanda and myself, and before we ever got married, we were dating. But things were kind of just not really settled. We were kind of restless in our relationship, really not knowing where this whole thing was going to go. And we found one summer we were separated because of work, and so Amanda was working in California, and I was working in Pennsylvania. We had met in college, we had started dating, and so we just weren't really sure if engagement and getting married was kind of the thing. And so we had made this kind of pact with each other that we didn't want to date on and off, that if we called it off, that we would go and we would pursue other relationships then if it didn't really work out. We didn't want to kind of just spin our wheels, if you will. And so the end of the semester came, I picked up work back in my hometown, back in Pennsylvania, and she worked for the college as a piano player, going around with a tour group, and they played concerts in different churches and things like that. And so she was on the West Coast, a 3-hour time difference. And so many times to kind of connect and be able to catch up and check in with each other, we'd call late at night. And so she would get done her gig on the West Coast, and I'm on the East Coast, and so it's like 2-3 o'clock in the morning when I get a chance to finally talk to her. And so I would go to bed, go to sleep, and set my alarm and try to check in, or I'd listen to see if it would buzz and see if she would be free to talk. One night it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and finally she got off from her gig, from the concert that they were doing, and reached out to her, and we were talking. I was tired, I had a bad week and frustrated, and so that night, I was so flustered because it had gone weeks and weeks of this just feeling distant and like this thing wasn't working out. So I remember that night, as we were talking, I started pressing her, what are your thoughts? What's the future for this? And she couldn't think clearly because I was late for her too, but she was busy and we were just distant. We hadn't seen each other in months, and so it just was really tough. And so finally, I was about to press her and say, listen, if this, and then all of a sudden, the phone went dead. The line cut off. And I thought, I can't believe this. She hung up the phone on me. So I dialed her number back to try to see what was going on, to hopefully maybe it was just a mistake. Maybe it was just an accident. But she never picked up. And I dialed back again a second time and a third time. And finally, in just frustration and in just fatigue, I finally went to bed and thought, that's it, we're done. This is over. And so like any bullheaded, strong, stubborn guy, I dug my heels in the ground and refused to talk to her and refused to call the next several days. But I didn't hold out long. About 2 days passed or so, and finally I was out front at my parents' house mowing the lawn, and it got the better of me, and I had to know, and I thought, I'm just going to call her. I know she's probably busy. This is not normally the time that we call and talk to each other, but I'm going to just call her and reach out to her. And so I called her number, and to my surprise, she picked up. And as I heard her say, hey, how's it going? I realized I heard in her voice that she wasn't upset. I realized that there was just this sense that there was just this uncertainty there with her, but that it wasn't too far gone. And so as we began to talk, we began to kind of pick up things and kind of reconnect. As I talked to her, I found out that she didn't hang up on me. And she said, well, did you hang up on me? I said, no. And all of a sudden we realized it just was some kind of phone malfunction. And as we began to talk, we realized that we're both tired. We just give it some time, that we'd try to kind of see where things are at once we could spend some more time and see each other again once we got back to school for that next semester. Well, the rest of the story is this. It's been 15 years. We've been married, and 4 kids later, and doing ministry and working together, starting a business, all kinds of different things, and loving life, and it all worked out. But sometimes when we haven't heard from somebody in a while, it's hard for us to think that they still love us, that they still care about us. We doubt, and we have insecurities that come into our mind that keep us from thinking, do they really love me? With God, sometimes maybe you feel like God has stopped speaking and God doesn't love and God doesn't know. And maybe you find yourself right now, your heart is kind of turned away from God because, well, God hasn't spoken to you, or God hasn't shown himself or come through. And maybe you stopped praying, and maybe you struggled through wondering, God, where are you when I'm struggling so badly? We find this in 1 Peter 5:8. Peter writes, stay alert. He says, watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. If you ever watch the National Geographic documentaries, you always see that it's the animals that are the sick or animals that are on the fringe that the lions go after. It's the same thing for us. As Satan wants to pick us off when we get distant from God or when we're hurt and we're not doing well, and he finds us in our weakest moment, that's when he wants to pounce. That's when he wants to go after us. In John 10:10, it says that Satan wants to steal, kill, and destroy our joy. But Jesus has come that he wants to give us life and life more abundant. And so maybe for you, maybe you need to hear these words in Isaiah chapter 30, verse 21. This is the way you should go, whether to the right or to the left. It's talking about this concept that God is speaking, but we need to tune in to his voice and stop and calm our hearts and take a moment to have a little bit of peace. In the psalm that says, "Be still and know that I am God." Maybe right now you feel like God hasn't spoken to you a long time. But have you ever thought about this? That sometimes the teacher goes silent when it's time to take a test. And maybe God is allowing you to go through a test right now, and the silence is deafening. And the silence is loud in your life because you're desperate to hear from God. And yet maybe right now, God is working on your behalf. Maybe God is calling, and maybe you're just not tuned in. So my encouragement to you today is this. God hasn't stopped speaking. Look for and listen for his voice, and look for his fingerprints in your life. Look for those things where God is working and God is moving in your life, because he hasn't forgotten you. He hasn't forsaken you. He has not abandoned you. Thanks so much for being a part of this devotional today. I hope this was a word of encouragement. Go ahead and share this with someone else, and we'll see you in the next devotional. Thanks for watching.